The Iron Age marks the culmination of the three historical metal ages, succeeding the Copper and Bronze Ages. It signifies the final stage in the three-age division that begins with prehistory, advances to protohistory, and ultimately reaches the Iron Age. This classification stems from its initial application to describe Iron Age Europe and the ancient Near East, expanding over time to encompass various regions of the Old World. While meteoritic iron has been utilized for centuries in diverse regions, the onset of the Iron Age is typically pinpointed by archaeological convention, specifically when the production of smelted iron, including steel tools and weapons, supersedes the prevalent use of their bronze counterparts. In Anatolia, the Caucasus, and Southeast Europe, the Iron Age commenced in the late 2nd millennium BC, approximately around 1300 BC. Simultaneously, in the ancient Near East, this transition coincided with the Bronze Age collapse in the 12th century BC. The technology swiftly disseminated across the Mediterranean basin and South Asia between the 12th and 11th centuries BC. Its expansion into Central Asia, Eastern Europe, and Central Europe experienced some delay, with Northern Europe embracing it around the commencement of the 5th century BC. In India, the Iron Age is associated with the ironworking painted grey ware culture, dating from the 15th century BC to the reign of Ashoka in the 3rd century BC. While the term Iron Age is less prevalent in the archaeology of South, East, and Southeast Asia compared to Western Eurasia, it gained recognition more recently. In Africa, unlike the universal Bronze Age, numerous areas transitioned directly from stone to iron. Some archaeologists propose that iron metallurgy independently emerged in sub-Saharan Africa around 2000 BC, separate from developments in Eurasia and neighboring parts of Northeast Africa. The traditional notion of the Iron Age concluding with the advent of written historiographical records faces scrutiny in the modern era. Written language and steel use evolved disparately across the archaeological record in different regions. For instance, in China, written history predates iron smelting, resulting in infrequent use of the term. In the ancient Near East, the establishment of the Achaemenid Empire circa 550 BC is commonly considered a cutoff date, despite ample written records dating back to the Bronze Age. In Central and Western Europe, the Roman conquests in the 1st century BC signal the end of the Iron Age, while the Germanic Iron Age in Scandinavia concludes circa AD 800, marking the onset of the Viking Age. History of the concept. The archaeological framework known as the three-age method, encompassing stone, bronze, and iron ages, originated in the study of European archaeology during the first half of the 19th century. By the latter part of the century, this methodology had expanded its scope to include the archaeology of the ancient Near East. Its nomenclature draws inspiration from Hesiod's mythical Ages of Man. Christian Jurgensen Thomsen introduced this archaeological era to Scandinavia in the 1830s. By the 1860s, it gained widespread acceptance as a valuable categorization for the earliest history of mankind overall, finding application in Assyriology. The conventional periodization in the archaeology of the ancient Near East, as we recognize it today, took shape in the 1920s to 1930s. Initially employed as a tool to decipher the archaeological layers of Europe, the three-age method eventually evolved into a comprehensive system applied to unearth the historical layers of both European and ancient Near Eastern civilizations. Definition of iron. Centuries before the advent of the Iron Age, various ancient civilizations utilized meteoric iron, a naturally occurring iron-nickel alloy. The earliest known artifacts crafted from meteoric iron are 9 small beads dating back to 3200 BC, discovered in burials at Gerza, Lower Egypt. These artifacts were meticulously shaped through precise hammering techniques. The defining characteristic of an Iron Age culture lies in the widespread production of tools and weapons crafted not only from found iron but also from smelted steel alloys containing added carbon. The key innovation enabling the production of carbon steel is crucial, as it results in tools and weapons that surpass bronze in both hardness and lightness. Smelted iron makes intermittent appearances in the archaeological record during the Middle Bronze Age. Despite the natural abundance of terrestrial iron, the high temperatures exceeding 1250 degrees Celsius (2280 degrees Fahrenheit) required for smelting rendered it beyond the technological reach of the time until the close of the 2nd millennium BC. In contrast, the components of bronze, tin with a melting point of 231.9 degrees Celsius (449.4 degrees Fahrenheit) and copper with a relatively moderate melting point of 1085 degrees Celsius (1985 degrees Fahrenheit), were well within the capabilities of Neolithic kilns dating back to 6000 BC, capable of reaching temperatures exceeding 900 degrees Celsius (1650 degrees Fahrenheit). Ancient iron production, in addition to specialized furnaces, necessitated the development of intricate procedures for impurity removal, carbon admixture regulation, and the innovation of hot working techniques to achieve a beneficial balance of hardness and strength in steel. The utilization of steel also became subject to economic considerations stemming from advancements in metallurgy. Beginning. The commencement of widespread global iron production is identified by modern archaeological evidence around 1200 BC, signaling the conclusion of the Bronze Age. The Iron Age in Europe is often viewed as a component of the Bronze Age collapse in the ancient Near East. Anthony Snodgrass proposes that around 1300 BC, a scarcity of tin and disruptions in Mediterranean trade prompted metalworkers to seek alternatives to bronze. This period saw the recycling of many bronze implements into weapons, and the increased adoption of iron contributed to advancements in steelmaking technology and reduced costs. With the resurgence of tin availability, iron became a more economical, robust, and lightweight option. Forged iron implements eventually replaced cast bronze tools permanently. In Central and Western Europe, the Iron Age spanned from approximately 800 BC to 1 BC, commencing in pre-Roman Iron Age Northern Europe around 600 BC and extending into northern Scandinavian Europe circa 500 BC. The Iron Age in the ancient Near East is generally considered to span from around 1200 BC, coinciding with the Bronze Age collapse, to approximately 550 BC, or 539 BC. This period marks the initiation of historiography with Herodotus, signifying the conclusion of the proto-historical era. In China, the development of writing predates any recognizable prehistoric period characterized by ironworking. The transition from the Bronze Age to the Qin dynasty of Imperial China is nearly seamless, with the term Iron Age occasionally applied to the transitional period from around 900 BC to 100 BC, during which ferrous metallurgy was present, albeit not dominant. Ancient Near East. The commencement of the Iron Age in the ancient Near East is associated with the unearthing of iron smelting and smithing techniques in Anatolia, the Caucasus, or Southeast Europe during the late 2nd millennium BC, around 1300 BC. The earliest evidence of bloomery smelting of iron is traced to Tel Hamma in Jordan, dating back to approximately 930 BC, as determined through 14C dating. The early Iron Age in the Caucasus region is traditionally segmented into two phases: Early Iron I, dated around 1100 BC, and Early Iron II, spanning the 10th to 9th centuries BC. Despite this transition, many cultural traditions from the Late Bronze Age persist into the Early Iron Age, indicating a socio-cultural continuity during this period of change. In Iran, the earliest tangible iron artifacts emerged in the 9th century BC. Tepeh Zanloo stands out as the most extensively studied archaeological site in Iran during this epoch, providing valuable insights into the developments of the time. West Asia. In the ancient Mesopotamian states of Sumer, Akkad, and Assyria, the early utilization of iron can be traced back to around 3000 BC, although the specifics remain unverified. Among the earliest smelted iron artifacts discovered is a dagger featuring an iron blade unearthed in a Hattic tomb in Anatolia, dating back to 2500 BC. The widespread adoption of iron weapons, surpassing their bronze counterparts, swiftly propagated throughout the Near East, encompassing North Africa and Southwest Asia. As the first millennium BC unfolded, the origination of iron smelting was initially ascribed to the Hittites of Anatolia during the Late Bronze Age. In the context of the Bronze Age collapse, which marked the transition to the Early Iron Age, the gradual and relatively continuous dissemination of ironworking technology occurred in the region. The previously upheld belief in the Hittite Empire's success during the Late Bronze Age, attributed to their monopoly on ironworking, has undergone scrutiny and no longer enjoys scholarly consensus. The notion of such a Hittite monopoly posits that invading sea peoples played a role in spreading ironworking knowledge through the region. However, this perspective is no longer universally accepted. Despite the presence of some iron objects from Bronze Age Anatolia, their quantity is comparable to iron objects found in Egypt and other contemporaneous locations. Moreover, only a limited number of these objects serve as weapons. Egypt. Collections of Egyptian antiquities notably lack significant instances of iron metal. Until the conquest by the Neo-Assyrian Empire in 671 BC, bronze remained the predominant material in Egypt. The rationale behind this scarcity appears to be that the preserved artifacts largely pertain to tomb paraphernalia, such as funeral vessels and vases. The ancient Egyptians refrained from using iron in the crafting of these items or for any religious purposes, deeming it an impure metal. Iron was associated with Seth, the spirit of evil in Egyptian tradition, who was believed to rule over the central deserts of Africa, Gaston Maspero discovered fragments of iron in the Black Pyramid of Abu Sir, dating back to before 2000 BC. References to iron also appear in the funeral text of Pepi I. Excavations at Ugarit unveiled a sword bearing the name of Pharaoh Merneptah, along with a battle axe featuring an iron blade and a bronze shaft adorned with gold. Furthermore, a dagger with an iron blade discovered in Tutankhamun's tomb, dating back to the 13th century BC, was recently scrutinized and determined to be of meteoric origin. Europe. In Europe, the Iron Age represents the concluding phase of prehistoric Europe and the initial stage of the protohistoric periods, characterized by descriptions from Greek and Roman writers. In many European regions, this era abruptly concluded with the Roman conquest, although ironworking persisted as the dominant technology until more recent times. In other areas, the Iron Age may extend until the early centuries AD, concluding either through Christianization or new conquests during the migration period. The introduction of ironworking to Europe occurred in the late 11th century BC, likely originating from the Caucasus, and gradually expanded northward and westward over the subsequent 500 years. The commencement of the Iron Age was not simultaneous with the appearance of iron in Europe but marked the gradual replacement of bronze in the crafting of tools and weapons. This transition did not unfold uniformly across Europe. Local cultural developments played a crucial role. For instance, the Iron Age in prehistoric Ireland commenced around 500 BC, a period when the Greek Iron Age had already concluded, and persisted until around 400 AD. Radiocarbon dating indicates that the Iron Age commenced on the Iberian Peninsula around 850–800 Cal BC with the arrival of the Phoenicians, slightly later on the northern Iberian Plateau. The widespread adoption of iron technology in Europe coincided with developments in Asia. The prehistoric Iron Age in Central Europe is subdivided into two periods based on historical events: the Hallstatt culture, early Iron Age, and the Latine, late Iron Age, cultures. The material cultures of Hallstatt and Latine are further categorized into four phases: A, B, C, D.